Hi, today we are going to read Chapter 2 in Becoming Naomi Leon by Pam Munoz Ryan. Let's inhale and exhale. Let's begin. Chapter 2, A Skulk of Foxes. The knocking became a pounding and someone yelled, "Anyone home?" "That's not Fabiola," said Graham. "Naomi, you expecting anyone?" I shook my head. I thought I'd heard that voice before, but I couldn't put it to a face. Setting the bowl aside, my hand twitched, and I missed the counter. The 3 soap carvings tumbled to the floor in a rain of white, feathery shavings. "For heaven's sake, Naomi," said Graham. "It looks like a fox got into the hen house. Clean that up, lickety-split, and I'll get the door." Graham got up, turned off the television, and reached the door in one step. "Did I mention that company's coming twice? I hope it isn't someone trying to sell me something, and me and my clown head. I surely don't need the door-to-door makeup." If it was a salesperson, they'd have to talk to Graham through the screen because she never ever set foot outside the trailer in her hair curlers. Graham opened the door. She narrowed her eyes like she was trying to focus real hard. While I cleaned up the soap mess, I craned my neck to see who was standing on the step. "Well, aren't you going to invite me in?" Graham truly looked like she'd seen an apparition, which is what she calls a ghost. She finally stepped aside, and a lady walked in, pulling a big, black, plastic garbage bag that she had to tug through the small door opening. "I got my belongings to fit in this one bag, and that's a miracle," said the lady. "You all were hard to find. I looked in 3 phone books before I found the address. I never suspected you'd be living in a trailer park." She wore jeans, red boots, a black leather jacket, and a hefty splash of sweet gardenia perfume. Her hair looks like that crayon called maroon, the one that's not quite purple and not red, but something in between. And for some reason, I couldn't take my eyes off her lipstick. It was the same exact color as her hair, and it went up and down in a perfect rounded M on her top lip. Owen sniffed the sweet air. The lady looked at Owen and me and said in a sing-song, "Hi!" When she got no more than a blink from us, she sat down on the covered bench that served as the seat for the kitchen table. When the table was put up, the seat doubled as a fold-out bed. She took a long look at us, then turned to Graham, who was still holding the door wide open, and said, "Just look at these babies." All I could think was that no one in their right mind would ever mistake me for a baby. Sure, Owen looked more like a kindergartner than a second grader, but it was for positive that he was nowhere near babyhood. Graham finally shut the door. The lady said, "My, you two have gotten big." A strange, queasy feeling crawled around my stomach. "Naomi, Owen," she said, "get yourselves over here and give me a hug." Slowly, Graham shook her head back and forth, still looking dazed. "You can't just waltz in here after all these years and expect the children to recognize you." "Don't be silly," said the lady. "Children always know their own mother. Don't you, darlings?" The words swarmed in my head. "Our mother?" said Owen, his gravelly voice cracking. My heart pounded so hard that I feared it would leap across the room, and my thoughts started jumping up and down on a trampoline and bouncing off the corners of my mind. Her face was round like Owen's, and her skin was so white it was almost pink, like Owen's. I suppose that came from all the Oklahoma in her, but she didn't look anything like the pictures of the blonde teenager that Graham had shown us over the years. Still, her eyes and the smell of her perfume were strangely familiar. Graham said, "Naomi, Owen, go on in your room so I can talk to Terry Lynn." "Oh, that's not my name anymore. I changed it to Skylar. Isn't it beautiful? Naomi and Owen, come over here. I would like to hug my children." We looked at Graham and she nodded. Owen went first and reached out to hug Skylar, but before he could, she said, "Oh, look, you have something stuck on your shirt." And she reached down and started to pull off the long piece of tape pressed across his chest. Owen clasped his hands over the tape. Graham and I yelled at the same time, "No!" He likes it, I said. "It's just a little comfort thing he does," said Graham. Some kids had blankets or stuffed animals they dragged around. Others got contentment from twirling their hair or sucking their thumbs. Owen had to have tape stuck to his shirt, the clear kind people used to wrap for presents. For some reason, it brought him a peculiar satisfaction. Skylar pulled her hand back. "He wears it on purpose?" She looked from Graham to me to Owen. Then she started laughing. "Oh, woman, what have you done to this boy?" Graham's eyes got all beady like pigeon eyes. "He's just fine. There's no harm done." Owen looked at Skylar as if she was a fairy princess, but still didn't take his hands off the tape. He gave her his biggest jack-o'-lantern smile. I swore his mouth was too big for his face, and said in a dreamy sort of way, "It's all right. You didn't know." I walked over to Skylar, and she put her hands on my shoulders, keeping me at an arm's length. She did that sort of leaning in type hug, with a quick cheek-to-cheek touch. It's not the "I haven't seen you in 7 years" type of hug that I would have expected. Then, she did the same to Owen. I put my arm around Mr. Starry Eyes and herded him to the bedroom. As soon as we were there, Owen grabbed my hands and started jumping up and down.
It's our mother. It's our mother. Maybe she missed us and wants to know all about us and has presents for us."
"Shh! Owen, stop," I said. We were only a lick and a promise from the living room kitchen, separated by a flimsy accordion door, which I did not shut. I wanted to hear the conversation word for word.
"I need a place to hang for a while,"
said Skylar. "These children don't know you."
"Well, it's about time that they did."
"You should have thought of that years ago," said Graham. "I'm not going to have you coming in here, Terry Lynn, and messing with their lives."
"I told you, my name is Skylar."
"And where did you get that from?" said Graham.
"My new boyfriend, Clegg, he said I didn't look like a Terry Lynn. He said I looked beautiful like the sky. I'm Skylar Jones now. I went back to my maiden name, and for your information, I'm not here to mess up the kids' lives. I'm just here to visit while Clive's at training."
"Training," said Graham.
"He's a tattoo artist," said Skylar. "And don't look at me with that hard-eyed stare. There's good money in tattoos. He's learning dragons and flames from a guy in downtown San Diego. Clive is staying with him at the studio, and it's too small for me, too. So I thought since I was in the area, it would be a good time to, reconnect with my children."
"Where have you been all this time?" asked Graham.
"I've had some trouble."
"What kind of trouble?" said Graham. Even though my ear was straining to catch a phrase, their voices gathered in a whirl of whispers that I couldn't hear. Then we heard Skylar yell,
"You can go along with me or not. I'm their mother, and Clive says I have rights."
Now we could hear Graham loud and clear. "You left those children with me when that boy was a year old and covered head to hide with infected insect bites. Naomi was 4 and didn't even talk until she was almost 6.
"Don't make out like it was such a big deal,"
interrupted Skylar.
"Naomi was always stubborn and quiet, and Owen just had a few flea bites."
"No, ma'am," said Graham. "Naomi went to a counselor for 2 years. She had selective mutism, and that's what it's called, from insecurities and Lord knows what other trauma during her young life. That's what the counselor told us, and Naomi still doesn't talk much. Owen was on antibiotics for 3 months to get him cleared up. There's no telling what went on in Mexico that caused those children's abominations. And now, 7 years later, after you never sent a card or made a telephone call to even let us know that you were alive, you want to talk about your rights? There was a little hitch in Graham's voice. Terry Lynn, they're tied to me. You promised I would raise them proper with no interference. That's what we agreed on before you left.
Naomi and Owen seem fine now, so I couldn't have been that bad, and I've changed my mind about seeing them. That's all. Now, I'm going to meet Clive, but I'll be back later, and I'd appreciate you calling me Skylar.
When the trailer door closed, the floor jiggled beneath our feet. Owen and I ran to the louvered window and looked out. There was just enough brightness from the porch light to see Skylar get into a red Mustang, touch up her lipstick, and pull away from the trailer. She tore out of the trailer park, going faster than the posted 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. Part of me couldn't wait to see her again. The other part of me was wringing my hands like a contestant in the Worrywart Olympics. All of a sudden, I had a million questions. Why did she come back? How long was she going to stay? Would she like us? Would we like her? My thoughts dived into a jumble in the middle of my mind, wrestled around until they were all wadded up into a fisted knot, and attached themselves to my brain like a burr matted in a long-haired dog. That's end of chapter